Hi, my name is Lewis.
And I'm Susanna.
And this is Switched Media. So, Susanna, how much do you like going to the movies?
I wouldn't know because I haven't been in, 4-5 months since the cinemas shut.
Okay.
They are open.
Yeah, they
believe it
are.
or not. I know some people who have gone recently, but I've been sitting on my couch mostly, watching whatever I can find on the streaming services, of which there's far too many to choose from these days.
You're going to have subscription tiring. Is that even a word?
I think it is.
Okay.
I do believe that is exactly how I've been feeling the
Subscription
last
fatigue
few
is
months.
the word
one.
I'm looking for.
Yeah, content fatigue.
Yes. Well, if you've been watching all your content on a streaming service, have you got Disney Plus?
I fell for Disney Plus at the beginning of lockdown because there was something particular. I don't even remember what it was, but there was something I wanted to watch, and I only have the Blu-ray disc for it because normally I just watch my DVDs, but my DVD player isn't a Blu-ray player, so I had to. I was like, I need to watch this movie right now. So I got a 7-day trial that was going to be a 7-day trial, and that was about 3.5 months ago.
And you're still paying to this day?
Yeah, I am, unfortunately. But what I'm not sure is whether I'll pay for Mulan.
That's right. That is right. Disney will be charging you $30 more on top of your Disney Plus subscription to watch the new blockbuster.
Which I would probably spend at Downton Newmarket. It would be $10 to $15 at the cinema to see it on a big screen in a lovely seat and grab myself some snacks, go with some friends. And as much as I like my TV, it is not as big as an IMAX screen.
No, that's right. And this is where I guess people are getting conflicted about, right?
Oh yeah, there's some very interesting discourse happening at the moment about whether or not this move to Disney Plus is a smart one. I think I've got there was a tweet that someone put out with a quick question that had over 8,700 votes, which was, will you pay $30 US to watch Mulan on Disney Plus, of which 54.7% said no chance, I'll wait. And there was quite a few people saying that they're just going to pirate it, as opposed to 16% that they said they'd actually buy it.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets tricky, right? Is obviously with the pandemic that we all live with now, is production companies like Disney and cinemas and all those other places are struggling to make money.
Yep.
But in saying that, $30 for a movie that could be pushed back. There is no reason it needs to be
released. And it's being released in cinemas in places where Disney Plus isn't available.
Right.
So they are still technically doing a cinematic release. I think one of the really interesting things, a lot of people are saying, it's $30 by the time you take your family and you get drinks and snacks, etc. It's going to cost you way more than that anyway. But the other thing is, when you buy a movie, $30, it's not necessarily that much to buy a movie these days. Most of your movies on iTunes are around the $25 mark, but that movie on iTunes is yours forever. What I'm reading from a lot of the discourse seems to be saying that if you then cancel your Disney Plus subscription, unlike a lot of their other, so when you buy a movie through iTunes, when you buy those kinds of things, you keep it. When you delete your Disney Plus subscription, you lose access to the Premier tier access on Mulan. It will not transfer over into your iTunes library or any other movie watching place where you store your online purchases. So even though you've spent $30, which you might spend on a DVD, you've got that DVD for life. Mulan will eventually disappear.
And this is the thing with tangible media, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you keep that thing, but now, and like you said, iTunes and Apple TV and all these other places, they give you that option of keeping it so you can revisit that, but with Disney Plus.
When you've made that purchase, you've made that purchase. And I mean, obviously you expect when you cancel your Netflix subscription, anything you've downloaded, well, that's all on the Netflix app. It's going to go away as well. You don't get to just, keep all of that content. But that's because it's only a subscription.
That's
what
right.
are you actually paying for here? Because I think a lot of people, cinema, with the pandemic, one of the things that will be interesting to see is what happens with cinema. Some people are saying, Mulan going straight to Disney Plus is just proof of the death of cinema. But when you haven't been able to leave your house, particularly in Australia, for so long, cinema is going to become potentially actually an experience like going to the theatre. The theatre is you go to the theatre for the experience of going to the theatre. So when you pay $30 to watch it on your TV at home, what are you actually spending $30 on?
Yeah, and that's right. You're paying $30 for the film. You're not paying $30 to sit on your couch, watch it on your TV, and etc. like that. You're paying $30 for the film and for its production costs, essentially.
Exactly.
So it will be interesting. I mean, not to go down the cinema is dead rabbit hole or anything like that, but to compare it to Christopher Nolan's new film Tenet.
Exactly.
It's being released in Australia, not in America, but to a wider audience in a sense. Whereas, again, not produced by Disney, a Warner Brothers company, they've taken another approach. Whereas Disney, they have their streaming service, and they've said, okay, we're not just going to put it on, like, what was that one they released? It was like the animation.
Oh, the Onwards. The new Onwards.
That's right.
But the interesting thing with Onwards versus Mulan is a moneymaker. Mulan is a blockbuster. Yeah. It was set to gross over $1 billion in box offices. Onwards was a Pixar animated film. They never gross as big in box office.
That's exactly right. They know their audience. They know that this is going to get bums in seats, whether it be at the cinema or on your couch, but the charging of $30 is questionable.
Yes, I guess the interesting thing with there is that Tenet is not a Disney film, but what is technically a Disney film is Black Widow, which is still set, and if you go on to Event Cinemas on their upcoming movies, October, the release date's sitting there for Black Widow, which is highly anticipated. Sadly wasn't the first Marvel all-woman-led film. Captain Marvel was great, but it would have been great if Black Widow had come first. But, like, that's also a big, film that everyone's been anticipating that got pushed back with its release date, and it's not gone to cinema, which is some interesting questions as to, what's Disney's strategy with putting Mulan up on Disney+. There's actually been not a huge amount of information being put out through your major media publications, and even just across social medias, aside from Twitter, about the fact that this isn't the first time Mulan has had a controversy. And it's not just been about Disney+. So it has started about, actually last year, when the lead actress chosen to play Mulan, who is a very well-known Chinese actress, actually was quoted saying, "I support the Hong Kong police. You can all beat me up now," is the exact wording that has been quoted in response to the excessive police force in the protests that were going through Hong Kong last year. Naturally, this movie obviously is set to appeal to a very large Asian, specifically Chinese audience, and it has not, that response from the lead actress has not had a particularly positive response, particularly from those in Hong Kong, who, they view Mulan, for them Mulan is a, the director of the movie, Kara, has said that how in her research and the places that she went, how deeply important Mulan is in mainland China, and this legend is something that is ingrained in, like, their society as this amazing person. So everyone was quite mad to, and just, rightfully so, to have the lead actress showing her support for what a lot of people are referring to as an authoritarian regime. And the interesting connections that some people are making between that is their question of Disney's involvement, as she is the lead actress of one of the biggest films they're releasing this year. People are wondering what Disney's stance is on this whole topic and these protests, given that she's in their movie.
It's a tricky thing to
very
delegate.
Complex issue.
Very, very, very complex, because she is Chinese, and all nationalities feel a sense of pride, no matter where you're from. So Disney, obviously, in a tough position right now, and so is the star.
And I think a lot of this idea of, the fact that people are so passionate about this movie and passionate about the fact that it's supposed to set to bring forward their culture rather than, what was portrayed in the animated film, which so many people love, but wasn't necessarily actually accurate to the particular law. The producer, John Reed, told The Hollywood Reporter that people would come into the audition and would say, "Sorry, I know this is really unprofessional, but before I start, I just want you to know the animated movie was the first time I saw someone that looked like me speak English in a movie theatre." and his response to that was that the stakes couldn't be any higher for them to ensure that this movie was accurately representing, the culture that it is surrounding, and the fact that it's so deeply steeped in this Chinese folklore. And that the director did lots of her own extensive research. She took multiple trips to China, spoke to experts, a lot of the foremost specialists in the Tang Dynasty military strategy, so that she could make sure that what is, interestingly for Disney, a war movie, not so much the Disney film. She has said that it is very much the war movie, but obviously kept to the standards that is required for a Disney family film of no blood, all of those kinds of things. But she's gone through all this effort to try and, they've tried to be really true to this culture, which is great. It's really good. But then there's also some other interesting sides to it, which is people wanting to know why an Asian filmmaker wasn't brought in to produce, because most of the main executive production team is American.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I will read this quote here by Kara, the director. Kara, the director, responded to that exact sort of issue that you were raising and was saying, although it's critically important a Chinese story is set in Chinese culture and history, there apparently is another culture, Susanna, which is at play. And that is the culture of Disney. That sticks out to me as...
That's a very interesting statement to be made from the director of
the film. Of a Chinese,
particularly a film that's so steeped in another culture.
Yes,
because
that's right.
Let's be honest, the culture of Disney is hugely Americanized. It's massively American, which is fair enough. It's an American company, and Walt Disney made it back in the
I think it
was like
don't quote me. I
think
I was going to say the 40s, but don't quote me.
Snow White came out in, I think it was 1932 or 33.
Okay.
That's when Snow White, the first fully animated film, came out from Disney. But it's a very American company. So I think it's a very interesting statement to be coming from them, considering that what the question becomes, what was more important, the culture of Disney or the culture of the story?
Yeah, right. Look, I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, but I can tell you what the culture of Disney is. It's getting bums in seats, it's getting money. We've spoken about that earlier. So that's the culture of Disney, and it's a very alarming quote, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, and, that whole kind of push towards, the money over the being true to the actual, culture and story of being shown is evident in quite a few different areas of this production.
I'll finish on, look, she starts the quote very well, but then she backtracks, and she contradicts herself, and look, I'm sure Miss Caro is a lovely lady, but I kind of feel like this is a PR decision, and it doesn't reflect on her views.
It does really feel kind of like that kind of, it's very much, I think it's a very interesting way that they've gone about it, and it's also interesting, with that whole, idea for the money and the publicity and everything is we've got there's been a bit of discourse across Twitter on this, there's a tweet here I've got which says, tell me why Disney let Christina Aguilera appropriate Chinese culture in the new Mulan music video by having her do a dramatic wing eyeliner and a traditional Chinese hairstyle, which is an interesting point that I think actually talks about a slightly different side to it, not only in the cultural appropriation of the music video, but the question of why Christina was chosen in the first place to actually be the title song on this soundtrack, given she has no links or Asian heritage.
Yeah, again, we said off air, I was mentioning to you, look, like every big budget film, there's a soundtrack that's being produced, being released on vinyl, CD, digitally now, and I guess Christina sells records.
She does. She does,
records,
and she did sing "Reflection" on the original. That was actually her debut her chart debut back in 1998. Was singing the Reflection song for the end credits on the original animated Mulan. I just think that that's interesting. That that seems to be a lot of what people are saying, but that was 20 years ago, 22 years ago.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. I think an excellent example of, how times have changed is if you look at Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
So, a huge cultural movie, and it's actually been stated by Disney's marketing executive, said to them back when Black Panther was coming out, they said that this wasn't just for our core Marvel fans, we went about making it feel like a cultural event. And if you look back across all of the marketing from that movie, it was very much like that, and one of the major marketing points of that movie was its soundtrack, which featured all black artists.
And I will say, sold a lot of records.
Sold huge numbers of records. And, the statement that, Chinese music may not sell, I mean, you could have a look at, what about K-pop?
Again, yeah.
Massive American following, and yes, that's obviously Korean, not Chinese, but that's proof that, the Western world isn't just going to be interested in buying the Western music.
That's right. That is right. And, again, you can keep going around in circles and circles and circles.
Oh, absolutely.
However, the example given by yourself with the Black Panther soundtrack is a great one, right? We have a black superhero. I think the first one made into a big production, right?
Yeah.
And
first
so
one.
they've gone with that theme. It was great. It was awesome. And they've stuck with that theme across all transmedia with the music, the soundtrack.
The music, the soundtrack, everything that was in the press tour.
Yeah.
And, the interesting thing about that is the fact that it's then moved through the rest of the stuff that's come from Marvel going forward, That's actually, it's become a cultural phenomenon. People actually do, particularly when that film first came out, people were walking down the street, they were seeing each other, and they were doing,
that's right, yes.
for Wakanda. They were saying it. It became more than just a movie and a soundtrack. It became culture. And I think that Disney may have really missed an opportunity here to do the same thing with Mulan.
Yeah.
They could have really had the opportunity to really embrace that culture and let the people choose how they want to play it out. Because that's really, a lot of this stuff didn't come from Disney with Black Panther or from Marvel. Kevin Feige didn't go around going, now this is what's going to happen. It happened because people related to it and they took it on, they made it their own because they felt ownership over the product that was sitting there. And I guess the interesting question becomes, how has that not happened with Mulan, and what has Disney failed to do to get the same response? I don't know. Maybe Disney needs to have some more conversations with Kevin Feige because he's doing a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult. Look, I honestly believe that the best case scenario for this film would have been to push it to 2021.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see in the coming weeks with it coming out in early September whether or not that was a mistake not, and it will play out over the next few weeks and will be a very interesting thing to follow. And I know I certainly will be continuing to follow the story. I'm sure lots of people watching will also be doing the same, and I'm sure we'll probably bring it up in future episodes once we can actually see some hard results and statistics from those viewerships. I haven't decided. I've got my best friend's very, very keen to do a watch party and pay for it and everything. I haven't made up my mind. I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's because, again, not to rewind too far, but a watch party makes sense, right? Maybe everyone could chip in, and then it would be a cheaper experience. But, again, how many people are going to do that? So.
Well, I guess we'll find out whether that poll we looked at earlier proves to be true. And see what happens. We'd love to see what you guys think. Let us know. We'll be releasing a poll in the next couple of days. Let us know in the comments what your opinions are on this whole discourse around Disney Plus and Mulan. And if you're planning on going not going to see the movie, but if you're going to be
sitting on your couch and paying $30 to watch this movie.
Exactly. I hope you have some real good quality microwave popcorn there with you.
And remember, guys, you can find us at Switch Media on Facebook and Instagram. And if you find this interesting, tell a friend or a family member about these issues, because these issues affect everybody.
And, we'd love to get some stories from people who this kind of, this Disney discourse or, these kinds of racial issues and, issues of culture that come up quite frequently in the media industry. We'd love to hear, what other people's experiences have been, and ways in which the media industry could possibly be looking at improving on
and
these,
adapting, right?
improving and adapting, and starting to create more content than already has been happening that speaks to the experience of people.
And if you do have a Disney Plus account, let us know in the comments whether you'll be watching Mulan and paying for it, for that matter.
Yes, or perhaps don't write it on social media if you're planning on not paying for it.
Yeah, all that. Anyway, do you want to wrap it up there, Susanna?
Yeah, we'll be here every Friday. Episodes new release every week on a Friday. Love to hear from you guys, and let us know what kinds of issues in the media that you think are relevant that we could possibly have a bit of discussion around, and keep your eyes tuned for some guest speakers coming through. We should have some really interesting discussions coming up.
Wonderful. I'm Lewis, that's Susanna.
We'll see you guys next week.
You bet. Wicked.
I think that went pretty well.
I think it went really well, actually.